Hi, my name is Caroline Scholes, and I'll be doing a video reflection on The New World directed by Terrence Malick. The first thing I'll be talking about is the plot. At first, it focuses on the English settlements and the conflicts with the Powhatan tribe at first, as the English settlers are not only struggling with trying to survive through the new environment and lack of resources that they have, versus the idea that they are more powerful than the natives that they view as savages, and that conflict rises in the very beginning of the movie. Tension is usually shown through the use of sound and lots of build up through the people and the noise that causes such an overstimulation. An example of this is when John Smith gets kidnapped and taken to the tribe and is in some sort of execution ritual where not only the music is loud, but the people of the Powhatan tribe are speaking incoherently and overlapping each other to where you can't understand it, but you do have a sense of urgency or panic due to the overstimulation that is created in that scene. However, once John Smith leaves, the perspective switches from the English settlement and the struggles with that just to the story of Pocahontas. So there was a lot less conflict and tension in the second half of the movie, as it's more on the personal conflicts that Pocahontas has with herself and with her relationship with John Rolfe and her longing for John Smith after their relationship had ended. I think that they should have kept it either just as perspective from the English settlement, so it would transition more from John Smith to John Rolfe, and there would be consistent conflict with the English settlement throughout, rather than switching to Pocahontas' perspective and the storyline gets a little choppy in transitioning. Or they could have kept it from Pocahontas' perspective, so the beginning of the story would be from the Powhatan tribe and Pocahontas' perspective of John Smith and her relationships, as opposed to John Smith's perspective, so that the plot of Pocahontas' character and journey is all throughout the entire movie. The second thing I'll be talking about is character development. As I said before, the perspective in the beginning of the movie is from John Smith, and in the very beginning, the first few minutes, you see that he's very egotistical, very selfish, and no one in the settlement really likes him. But what is confusing is Pocahontas's immediate liking towards him and his immediate character change once he meets Pocahontas, that he is kind and selfless and much more gentle, and the way he had acculturated into the Powhatan tribe after he is kidnapped is very quick and does not really make a lot of sense, especially with his strong willpower and his belief that the natives are savages, and it does not necessarily connect, and it could have been more of a arc over time instead of such a dramatic switch in the very beginning that makes John Smith a much more likable character than he really should be. But the second he leaves to go back to England, he goes right back to those selfish ways where he only prioritizes himself, and even tells one of the other settlers who are staying there to tell Pocahontas that he had died. And that could be a motif to his separation of self with the way he is in England versus the way he is in the New World, and that the New World made him more down to earth and kind, and Pocahontas really brought that side out of him, whereas his idea of England, his basis of success was on himself, as opposed to in the New World where the basis of success was on the group and how well that the settlers were acclimating to the New World. On the other hand, Pocahontas' character development was very linear, and she had a very transformative identity change. She started out in the Powhatan tribe, and then her relationship with John Smith got her to be a lot more fond of the English settlers than all of the other people in the Powhatan tribe, causing her to be more of an outcast, and she was eventually put into the town of Jamestown, and she transitioned to the ways of Jamestown and kind of strayed away from her original native ways. And especially with her move to England and her marriage to John Rolfe, that really solidifies her transitioning into that culture, especially changing her name from Pocahontas to Rebecca, which is a very English name. And even the change of her clothes and only speaking her language, or only speaking English for the rest of the movie except the beginning, really shows how she had changed completely over time, and she did not go back in any way to her original self. John Rolfe has an overall lack of character depth because the second half of the movie is focused on Pocahontas and her journey of her experience in Jamestown and in England. So we don't get much of John Rolfe's character outside of his life with her, which creates an overall lack of development because we just don't see much of how he thinks about her or the way that he acts outside of his life with her, and we don't get to see his struggles as a settler or against the Powhatan tribe that we had gotten with John Smith's character. The last thing I'll be talking about is visual effects. Director Terrence Malick is known for natural, beautiful visual effects, and he has made many American films with those visuals in that. And the color palette is really gorgeous. You can see the lushness of the New World, especially in the spring, and you get shots of the sun, but then there's a great contrast when it's the winter and it looks dry, sparse, and cold. And not only does he have outside visuals outside of the characters, like there are shots where there are no characters in it at all, and it is just the nature, so that the audience is really immersed into the environment that the characters are in, and it shows that the environment is a part of the story and it's not just the characters. And especially with a movie like this, where the idea of the New World is a main point of the movie, that actually showcasing the New World and the natural elements in that, where it's untouched and so freeing and very different compared to England where they were. And we get to see a lot of that, and it's very immersive and beautiful in that. Overall, I think this movie was very pleasing to the eye and moved in a very nicely paced manner. However, I think that the perspectives throughout the movie with the changing of the plot could have been done a little bit better, as we got a lot more depth into the English settlers in the beginning, but then it switched to solely on Pocahontas. And I think if they wanted to have a compromise, it should either be one or the other, so it's not seemingly like a lot of what was in the beginning is irrelevant or like just not appealing by the end of the movie, because it's not a part of Pocahontas' journey at that point, and Pocahontas' journey wasn't showcased very much in the beginning of the movie, so the focus of her at the very end was a bit confusing. Thank you.